2021, I call the Town of Oxford Finance Committee meeting to order. All right. First item on the agenda is to reorganize, to vote on a chair and a vice chair. I'm going to pass on that as we have new members pending. One already sworn in and one may be sworn in so that they can all participate in the reorganization of the Finance Committee. Gives them both an opportunity to voice their opinions. The next item on the agenda is the May 5th meeting minutes. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at it. It was the meeting prior to our last town meeting. I'll give everybody a chance to look at the minutes and make sure if there's any changes, corrections, deletions. I don't. Oh, you wouldn't because you weren't at the last meeting. I don't think you're new, so Mark, you're not going to be able to vote on the minutes, but it should be in your packet. So it'll only be the three of us. Joan was there, Karina was there, I was there, and Roger, who's off the committee now, was there. So I'll give Karina and Joan a chance. I've already looked at it, but make sure that I didn't miss something.
I move that the minutes be accepted as printed.
All right, second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Karina?
Aye.
I vote aye as well, and I'll sign them right now. All right, the next item on the agenda is the discussion of the town warrant. What I'm going to do is you have both the warrant as printed and you also have the explanations of the warrant, okay? So, Article 1 is to see if there are any reports from a town officer or committee. I'm going to pass over that because currently there are none, and we're not going to, so there's nothing to vote on. We have no warrant reports from anybody. I talked to the town manager, and she's talked to the department heads and the other committees, so currently there's nothing pending. Article 2, invoice of prior year. Currently, Katie, are there any invoices from prior fiscal year due payable?
Not today. Hopefully, we won't be looking at that in May either, so.
All right.
So, but in the event that there is one that comes in the mail or comes to our attention between today and the town meeting, I think you should still take a vote on that.
All right, so I'd entertain a motion that it should, an invoice from a prior fiscal year resurface between now and town meeting, then we would vote to approve payment of the said invoice.
So moved.
All right, vote. Joan?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm yes as well. All right, now, Article 3 is Capital Stabilization Fund. This is our fund similar to our stabilization fund. This is for capital items, not just general items in stabilization. And the manager set that up, what was it, two fiscal years?
Yeah, I think we set it up two years ago, but we funded it a year ago for the first time.
Right, and we funded it last year with 100. So this would be a transfer from free cash, correct?
Yes, this would be a transfer from free cash, and I believe we did 200 last year. So the current balance in the account is $200,232.05 because it's earned a little bit of interest.
Okay, so as I said, the purpose of this would be for capital projects, specifically a capital one-time purchase of something. The fund was created in 19 at the annual town meeting, and right now we have a reserve of $200,000 and change, and this would be taking from free cash. It would not affect our tax rate of $100,000 from free cash, which I understand is a little over 3.4 million.
That's
currently.
right. That's right.
Free cash.
$3,441,729.
Okay, so this would be coming out of free cash from prior fiscal year, the money that was either unspent. Now, free cash comes from money that we budgeted, that we were gotten grants or revenue. I'll give you one, for instance, $650,000, I think, and change was derived from sale of tax title properties.
That's revenue. So we do a lot of our free cash with revenues that are over the estimates. And this one wasn't estimated because it was an auction.
It was an auction, so we didn't know what we were going to get for those properties, and resulted in $650,000. So that's where free cash comes from. Or say we budgeted something for an item. Go back a year, fiscal year, we had budgeted some money for breathing apparatus for the fire department. The fire department went out and got a grant for that money. So that money that we budgeted came back to free cash because the grant paid for the purchase of the breathing equipment. Just trying to give you where free cash comes from, because it's a bad description of where money is free. It's not free. It's last year's budget that was unspent for whatever the reason.
Yeah,
Or
and
new revenue that came in unanticipated.
there's also calculations that the state does. This is all certified through the state, and they also take into consideration our receivables. So with fiscal 20, the end of fiscal 20, we had over $600,000 in real estate tax receivables, and that has come down to closer to $200,000. So that $400,000 has now become free cash as well. So there's some of it's pretty simple and some of it's a little bit more complex, but that's what goes into free cash.
So this would not affect our taxes. This would be money that was already in our tax rate or found money, like I said, on grants and stuff. So we're transferring, basically transferring $100,000. So the capital fund would be $300,000.
That's right,
if this
and
was
change from interest, yes.
So do I hear a motion, if there's any questions or comments? If none, do I hear a motion to entertain transferring from free cash the $100,000 to the capital stabilization fund?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second? All right, take a vote.
Yes.
Yes, and I vote yes, so that passes, all right. Next article is 4. We really don't have, there's no financial implication for the Finance Committee to vote on. Basically, it's transferring back the library to the Board of Trustees, the Library Board of Trustees.
You can abstain.
So,
I have a question on that.
Sure.
Do you know why
That
it
would
was
abstain.
transferred in the first place?
yes, it was transferred so we could attain a grant.
Yes.
Under the Board of Trustees, the grant was not gonna be provided to us unless it was under the control of the
I'd say
Board of
you want to go into
Selectmen.
great detail, but sure.
So to
You
get
can
the
ask
grant
me.
money to fix the repairs, we had to transfer it at town meeting to the Board of Selectmen. Now, the board doesn't really want to actually manage, that's what the Board of Trustees, the Library Board of Trustees does, so, but to get the money, we did. And then we promised they'd transfer it back, which is what this article's doing. It's giving control of the library back to the Library Board of Trustees, now that the grant was received, so it's kind of like a,
Okay. Is there a renewal process that needs to be considered? Like a grant renewal process?
No, so it was a one-time grant for historic preservation. The Board of Selectmen are the only people that can convey property rights.
right.
So it's a permanent preservation restriction on the land and building for the Free Public Library. That was a condition of receiving those funds. So once that preservation restriction is recorded at the Worcester County Registry of Deeds, then the intent was to have the library care, custody, and control revert back to the Board of Library Trustees.
Right, and they were concerned at the time that we would make sure that happened. I remember at town meeting, the Board of Trustees, the Library Board of Trustees, and I guess there were stained glass windows and there's a lot of historical, the stained glass windows are one of the things that are over there that are historical in nature. I think it was like about $190,000 in grant, wasn't it? Something like that.
What was the exact grant? I think, so it was about 50,000. The
And
grant
then-
wasn't, but then, I think Jared probably speak more to that, because I think they said there might be leftover money in that fund, this is Mass Historical, and that they may fund the whole thing. This is the last I heard, so I don't know.
Speak to exact figures.
No, so it's still up in the air.
So there may be more money coming, so, because there's money left over, because they had to fix all the water damage, and then,
So, it was quite expensive.
It was a significant change, yeah.
yeah, when they started taking the bricks away, they saw that there was more rot and issues that was structural in nature that they had to, well, they get the free money, that was the purpose of the transfer. So we don't have to take a vote on this to give it back to the Board of Trustees. The next item is the repairs on the free library, and this article's to fund repairs on both the elevator and the HVA system at the library. Recently, the elevator has been misfunctioning due to faulty controls and rendered the elevator unusable. Parts are not available for the current control system, so the entire system needs to be replaced to ensure the building remains accessible to people with all abilities. Additionally, the HVA system requires repair of the coil and exhaust fans. The repair to reduce the moisture and mold in the basement of the library. If not addressed, the basement rooms will be deemed unusable due to poor air quality and mold. $87,000 would be transferred again from free cash, it would not affect. And I think the breakdown is HVA system was $12,000, and the repair of the elevator is $75,000, for a total of $87,000. And I know I can speak that the lower level, which houses a number of historical documents from the town, over 300 years, Civil War documents and stuff, preservation of that is critical, and I know, and that's part of what they're talking about in the lower meeting rooms downstairs, keeping it, because there's a lot of books, documents, and stuff that are housed down there. And so that would be a $12,000 expenditure. The elevator for accessibility is $75,000, and I know sometimes you go to repair things, they don't have to make the parts anymore, so unless Jarrett wants to speak to that, am I?
Sure. Just a couple things worth noting. We say that the control parts for the elevator system aren't available. Essentially, the company that had produced those parts is dissolved. They no longer exist. So it's really the parts there are rendered obsolete. So we've got our elevator maintenance company that maintains all of the town's elevators in every building, across every building, has recommended this repair essentially, and it has been malfunctioning on a more frequent basis essentially. So, and that elevator is what gets people up from ground level, up into the library, anyone that has an accessibility issue essentially. So maintaining ADA accessibility is a requirement, a code requirement basically.
So I would assume it wouldn't pass inspection, which every elevator in the state needs to pass. So
Exactly,
it would
yes.
fail.
Yep, that's right. And at this point, I mean, the actual infrastructure, the shaft and everything is in good shape from what our elevator maintenance company tells us. So it's really just updating those controls so that it functions on a regular basis. We don't have these malfunctions. And as far as the mold goes and the HVAC system repairs, the town did appropriate some money for some mold remediation. So we're working that project out right now. It's probably an emergency procurement, basically, to get that. We've tried to bid it out 2 times now, but that's to rectify some surface mold on sheetrock and ceiling tiles, but it doesn't address the HVAC components of that. So that's what this project is here, is to try to mitigate the moisture and not just the side effect of the moisture.
And I just drew the tip of the iceberg, get down to the root cause of it.
That's right, yes, exactly. So right now, again, it's surface mold, but you don't want to let this thing get out of hand there and become airborne, and that's when the real issues start. So
I noticed when I was there last, it's musty. You could the air.
we've got several dehumidifiers down there, and we do regular cleaning, but that's just a Band-Aid and just a temporary till we can hopefully get these repairs done.
Did you say you already awarded contracts for these repairs, or no?
No, we have not. No, as I mentioned, the $50,000 appropriation, I believe it was, in the building improvement fund, that might have been FY 21.
Right.
We've tried to bid that out now twice, and we've gotten very little interest. And at this point, we can, in my opinion, we can justify applying to the state for emergency waiver of the bidding requirements to get somebody on board. So that's in process right now. But the money for this is, on top of that. This is actually addressing the HVAC component of
elevator.
that. That's more of a cleaning and replacement of the sheetrock, the pipe insulation, the things where the mold is
Where
growing
it's
on,
visible,
essentially.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
This is getting to the cause of it.
Yes. Yep.
Are we gonna have to shut down the facility for?
No, we don't think so. No, we think that we can, keep it open. You have to probably shut down the basement level. That's where the bulk of the work is happening. So that might be off limits for, extended time. But this should be for both projects. I know I'm talking about a project that was previously funded, but it's a matter of a few weeks to get those.
Now, the
repairs
elevator
done.
is not usable currently, right?
Well, it is, but it's intermittent. The service is going in and out, so it's unreliable at best. So,
Somebody get trapped in there, huh?
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and take fund the $87,000 out of free cash for the elevator repair and the HVAC repair at the library.
So moved. So moved.
Motion. Second. All in favor, Joan?
Aye.
Abstain?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Mark's wife, trustee of the library. Yes. All right. Joslin Annex, and I think Jared has provided us some pictures of the annex for us to look at. The article reads, "The Jonic Annex is a structure located behind the Oxford Community Center. The structure does outlive its usefulness and is currently vacant and in unsafe condition. Break-ins have occurred over the recent months. Funding for the demolition of the building was included in the FY '21 budget of $50,000. However, it was determined there was significant amount of asbestos in the building, and an abatement must occur before demolition. The article will fund the asbestos abatement so the building can be demolished. A $200,000 transfer from free cash for hazardous material abatement." So I think you've got a bid right now of about 197 or something and change or not.
That's
and then
right.
And then on top of the 50 they already spent. So this is huge amount of money for a building that's gonna go away. I mean, and I see the pictures. 200,000 for asbestos abatement.
So in doing our due diligence, you know, we knew we had the $50,000 appropriated, which is probably a viable sum to take it down, but as part of any building demolition, you need to go in first and do a full hazardous materials assessment, which we paid, you know, a third-party professional company to come in and do that, and that's when they built out the estimate of what they think, you know, it'll take just to mitigate the hazardous materials so we can take the building down. Essentially, there was asbestos-containing materials in almost everything in that building, from the damp proofing on the foundation walls, ceiling tiles, floor tiles, pipe insulation. You know, given the era of that building, that's kind of what you'd come to expect. So it was far more than we would have anticipated. And the lion's share of that 197,000 or so is the foundation itself. It's the foundation damp proofing. So
That's what I was gonna say. I see this, the foundation,
about
looking at the
90-something
picture,
thousand, right?
you're about 14, 16 inches of poured foundation here.
that's right, and it's actually the material that they've put on the outside to keep moisture out, you know, from the basement. And so again, that's the lion's
All
share
that's
of that
gotta be
cost.
jackhammered out, or?
It's exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
'cause
So
it's
that's
cement.
It's concrete. Yep.
How long has that annex been there, roughly?
Oh, someone else may be able to speak to that better than myself. I don't, Katie, if you know,
Just
but
a
I
rough
think it's
idea.
My guess would be.
similar to the Project Coffee building, right?
I think it's when they probably built which one is the middle school or the high school?
Yeah, I know the asbestos
it would've
materials
been where
like
they were
that were like
placing-
60s and 50s, 60s, 70s, right, where that was really
So then it
prevalent,
was
I think, before it was
probably when they
phased
built
out.
the middle school then,
Yeah,
No.
that's probably right.
because they probably housed the kids there.
No, it's after
Well,
that.
it just seems like a lot of
But
money, and then
it's-
when you're
I think
telling me
it's
it's
been
in
at
the
least 30
foundation,
years.
and they have to jackhammer the foundation, and I'm looking at a good more than 12 inches of foundation on the.
That's right. Yeah, because I mean, it's really the damp proofing on the concrete, not even really the concrete itself. But to abate that, you gotta demo out the concrete. It can't
You
just
can't
go
let
down.
that be airborne, you have to encapsulate
Well,
that whole.
that's, I'm sure what Fuss and O'Neill had done that assessment for us. This is what they're known for, so I'm sure they built that into their cost.
So they would have to build almost like a tent enclosure around the foundation. and then
I don't know, I can't speak to that.
You can't
Mr.
have it going
Chairman.
airborne.
Yeah, I know that's the issue, right?
I know they wear respirators, but
That's
people
right.
walking by the community,
Yeah,
you can't have that stuff as they're
Nope.
jackhammering.
No, same thing when you're demoing the floor tiles with, it's once that, you know, mastic and everything goes airborne.
You have to
that's
have
when it's
negative air pressure, so you'd have to almost tent this whole footprint when you get down to the foundation. My
Probably
God.
why it costs so much.
Well, now I'm understanding it, now that he says, because I looked at I couldn't understand it until, when I'm looking at the boards and the sheet rock and stuff, I'm saying 190, all right, okay. But now you're telling me you've got to jackhammer this foundation.
Yeah.
You have to encapsulate that whole footprint.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
And then the question could be, you know, maybe posed that, is there something that can be done with the foundation moving forward? But it depends on what the town's plans are for that site, right? If it needs to be clean slate, then obviously you're taking the foundation out. If there's some plan for a future structure there, can you know, adapt or reuse that structure? Obviously, then you're constrained to the footprint of the current building, you know? So maybe that won't be of use to the town, but it's how long do you want it sitting there as well? Just an open foundation, because you can't let it sit there as an open foundation. You need to encapsulate it, so there's
That's
more
right,
money
you have to
there.
encapsulate, so if you sit there, you're gonna have to encapsulate it, because
Yeah,
it's a
you're
ticking time bomb.
gonna spend more money to keep it watertight essentially, so.
Yeah, otherwise it's gonna, once you open it up, you're a can of worms. Does anybody have any other?
Yeah, I'm wondering, do we normally do the hazardous waste assessment before we would attribute the funds? Is that part of the normal process for evaluating? for
Well,
demolition?
when we find that we have hazardous waste, yes, and then we go out and get prices and.
But we don't review for hazardous waste before?
I can't speak, I mean, I know that money was, I think, appropriated before
I know
typically,
that-
yes, I think you wouldn't wanna put the cart before the horse there, but,
Well, I know that when I toured the school the school buildings with the school department, and Mike Lippis,
Yep.
and I were at our facility, town facility, we went through all the buildings, and we looked for potential areas of mold, mildew and stuff, and we found a few areas that he's exploring right now. So actually physically went into buildings right from the boiler rooms all the way up to the gymnasiums, the stages and stuff. We spent a whole day going through the buildings, and it was very informative, and Mike did a great job, by the way. He was taking copious notes as to things to follow up on. So, yeah, I guess they are, you do that. But then at some point, you get a price on it, and it's mind-boggling how much this stuff costs. But it makes sense now only that you've explained that this foundation is part of the problem. Up till that, I couldn't see $197,000, but now I guess I can.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, if there was some kind of an evaluation in advance of that
Yeah,
50,000.
right, yeah.
Up with that number.
Yeah.
I would say yes, we'll go in with our own forces that have, a level of experience and knowledge of these things, right? But then, you have to put that cost, it's about $5,000 for that assessment, so.
Just to do the
Just to
assessment.
do the assessment, so normally you're waiting to get, if you can get some funding to do that. Then when you have the professionals come in, they know that that's what they're there for, essentially to guide us, so that's kinda what happened in this case.
Any other thoughts, comments from the,
No
Members?
impacts to the fields that are behind there, right?
yeah? Yeah, like I said, to do this is gonna have to be done so
Right.
that with the community in mind, so,
Yeah, and there's a lot of traffic on that little circuit with the soccer, the
yeah.
kids play back there.
So I can I'm starting to formulate what's involved here and what they're gonna have to go through, the hoops they're gonna have to go through to get this done safely.
And with no use identified to even consider rehabbing that building, the rehab cost would probably be, I'm sure it's exorbitant, and without a use identified. The town is undergoing a feasibility study of the community center as we speak. So having this, available space on that campus, maybe they'll identify something as part of that study too that could be of use, if it is a blank canvas.
Once it's a blank
Yeah,
canvas,
once
yeah.
it's a
We
blank
have
canvas.
a number of other properties that the town owns, right, that might be in a similar age bracket, is that?
Oh, yeah, that was a time, yes, I remember the middle school, where that used to be the high school. I'm going back till 91, 92, where we were constantly finding asbestos and removing it back behind the stage. Dr. Driscoll at the time, he was our superintendent of schools, was finding stuff. We thought we got it, and then we went to somewhere else. It was in the kitchens, and then it was somewhere else, and then we found some more. It's like a saga, like a follow the bouncing ball. So there was like 2 or 3 years in a row that he came back and we needed. I know one of the amounts requested was over 500,000 to do asbestos at the middle school at the time. It was the stage and behind the stage area at the time. So a lot of money. It's not cheap to do it. They have a huge liability. I wouldn't want to be their insurance carrier from a liability standpoint, because if they mess up, people can die. Any other thoughts or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve to transfer from free cash to the Joslin Annex demolition, or abatement, I should say, of $200,000. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, vote,
Aye.
Yes.
and I vote as well, unanimous, okay. Next article, Jared, I'm glad you're there, is the emergency roadway culvert repair. During the recent rainfall events, the culvert on Industry Park West Road and Prosper Street have failed. These failures were unanticipated and were not planned in our operating budget. An $80,000 transfer from free cash is planned to repair the culverts, and I think we have a picture from Jared of the culverts. Now, being an industrial road, isn't there a lot of truck traffic, or am I?
I'll tell you what, as far as a culvert failure of that magnitude, it's probably the most convenient location we could have had in town, because that road is, it sounds funny, but it's actually a semicircle that has 2 egress points on Main Street. And where that culvert actually goes beneath the road, businesses can still access from either point. So the road is presently closed, but it's a matter of convenience now for businesses. I've gotten calls already from them, when is it gonna be fixed? because they want to be able to back into their properties and businesses more conveniently. But luckily, right now, everybody has access, to their buildings, but it's obviously not in a state that we can leave it like that. It has to be repaired and restored. But again, these were unanticipated. These are acts of God, right? These storms, these unprecedented rainfall that we saw here in July and in June, or June and July rather. And, these culverts were on our list, right? That we know that they're in a certain state of, disrepair, but not an imminent risk of failure. So this was completely unanticipated.
It's always weather permitting, everything.
That's right.
It's weather permitting.
Yep.
But my only question is, on the drainage, you're gonna repair the damage. The cause of the damage, as far as where the water is flowing and everything, has that been engineered or looked at so that this will not be a repeat process? I mean, have you looked at how we got to this point where the water was channeling from, and
Absolutely.
does it need to be redirected, or is it being redirected?
What it is, it's essentially a matter of capacity of pipe, right? In this Industrial Park West, in the case of that culvert, we found after it failed, you see various different pipe sizes that were kind of stuck together, as sort of a hodgepodge. So hydraulically, not the most efficient thing. So when you have a storm, the intense storms that we had seen this summer, you're getting a headwater that's building up, and then water's gonna go path of least resistance. So it's finding these little voids in the pipe, where the pipes weren't joined together correctly, and then it just washes that material out, and that's where you get the road sinking and failing. So what we've already done, and we had done, and we were trying to schedule repairs for this in out years, right, as part of sort of our internal
road
capital
maintenance,
planning,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
We had sized an appropriate size culvert, for the design storm. It's for that classification of road, it's a 25-year design storm that you would essentially design for. So whether we use a bigger pipe or we're looking into precast concrete components, it'll be much larger in size, and we'll be able to handle that water and pass that storm.
I mean,
So we're not just replacing in kind, it's gonna be a full-on engineered solution
a full,
to avoid, any
avoid
future
this
failures.
from happening again. And,
That's right.
and where the water's coming from, have you looked at the source and everything, as far as, you're talking about capacity, but is it?
That's right.
Does that need to be?
So we did look at, when we size this, we've got to develop an estimated flow that is coming to that point in the stream, right in that culvert. So we actually did, there's certain software that we can use to delineate the watershed, what contributes to that point
Right,
at
that's
the
what I'm
stream. And it's actually, it's water that is coming off of 395 or passing beneath 395 and coming from the industrial park off Town Forest Road. So if you go off Cudworth Road, all of that roadway, all that wetland system there comes down to this point, so it's a lot of water. And then it actually makes its way down from there to Main Street where the railroad bridge is, so if anyone had driven down there during those storms, it was under a few feet of water.
Right.
So we're not, those are the state's issues down there, unfortunately.
our
but,
issues.
We'll be sure to pass the water that we need to at Industrial Park West.
All right. Anybody have any questions? Jared? If not,
Well, I do have a question.
Sure.
Now, the Prospect Street, that's already been repaired, hasn't it?
It has. So that was a decision we had to make. I mean, essentially, whether these are funded at town meeting or not, we need to repair them. In Prospect Street, out of these two, we're lumping them in. So this is an $80,000 transfer. Prospect Street was far less intensive and less costly, is what we were estimating. So you're looking at maybe a $10,000 repair there. So we said to ourselves, knowing we have to get this done, knowing that the traffic is greater on Prospect Street, we're going to do it now to get the road reopened for, public safety reasons, emergency vehicles, trash trucks, buses. And if we get this money, then we'll do an appropriate, transfer. Katie, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but transfer back into our operating budget to.
so this came out of your operating budget, or
So it
did it
came
come
up,
out of chapter 90?
we're floating it in the operating budget now because it's such a smaller dollar amount. But the Industrial Park West, that's the other 70,000 or so,
It's a
which
huge, the road's gone.
would be, yeah, exactly. So that's why, yes, it has been completed at this point.
Now, was that between Main Street and where the four-way stop is? Is that, is
Yes,
it that little,
on
it was on
Prospect,
there?
yes,
Okay.
yep, that's right.
So that's really not a high-traffic area.
Well,
It
people
is,
do
but it
use
is-
it as a cut through to get into Auburn. If you go up Prospect, you can get up to Route 20 that way. So
Oh,
we
that's
were
right, you can go
surprised
up but not
actually,
down.
once you close the road, you really get a sense of, the amount of
people
people
go
you're
up and not
inconveniencing.
down,
But
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Jared? All right. I'll entertain a motion to transfer from from free cash, $80,000 to the emergency culvert repair on West Industrial Park West and Prospect Street.
So moved.
Second? All right, all in favor, vote.
Aye.
Yes.
All four, yes. I vote yes. Next article is the Article 8, 335 Main Street acquisition. The old Santana Bank building located at 335 Main Street is currently vacant. Recently, the building was gutted following a burst pipe in the building. The town manager and economic development director have had conversations with the owner to consider selling or gifting the property to the town. The article would allow the Board of Selectmen to acquire the property by gift, purchase, or eminent domain. Many town departments have outgrown their office space, and the acquisition of this conveniently located property would have served several municipal purposes. The town has received complaints about the property and the lack of upkeep of the grounds. To convert a blighted parcel to a municipal use would also align with the development goals of the village business district and as identified by the Oxford Master Plan. The transfer from free cash would be planned to acquire this property should it become. Okay, there's no amount yet. At this point, we don't know if they're gonna give it to us or if there's gonna be a nominal fee, pick a number, 20, 50, 60, whatever, $1,000 or what. We do have money, like I said, the 3.4 in free cash, so if it came out of free cash, it would not affect the tax rate. However, the building is currently a shell. It's been gutted because of the bursted pipe over the winter. So there would have to be, not only acquisition cost, there'd be subsequent build-out costs. And it's a two-story building, by the way. There's an upstairs and a downstairs. So,
Do we know the age of the building?
I don't know the age of the building.
I don't know that either. We could always put this off, and if the town manager makes it, she can speak more to this.
Yeah, we
I
can
can
pass
certainly-
over this. I mean, maybe she could speak more to it. I know she's in direct negotiations with the current owner, whoever. There are a lot of banks have consolidated, so they have a company that takes on it. I think there's someplace in Delaware or someplace.
That
I
I
know
know.
they've had to call 4 or 5 different places to get somebody to mow the lawn, literally, or cut the weeds, but other than that, I mean, I don't know what the monetary amount would be to acquire the building, and nor would and then subsequently what it would be to make it usable for town purposes.
But I think we're anticipating reasonable costs, so we're not, we don't wanna pay $1 million for this,
Well,
nothing like that, so.
They had it for sale for, was it 1.3 million at one time?
Yeah, but we're not looking at
1.9,
that.
We're not, no, there's no way we could, no.
I think that she's really hoping to get it as a gift, so, but, I do have in my free cash plan a budget for it, should it, come to that, so. But she can definitely speak more to the aspects of the property itself and, any other questions you might have.
At this point, I'd say let's pass over it until we hear from her and get some more information regarding, numbers, and if it's gonna be free, that's a nice number.
It's a great number.
You know, I mean, at the same time, we just don't want it to get the town into a situation where we're constantly building and repairing an older building. that
Well,
maybe serves
part
less.
of the master plan, and I've talked to the school board, and when we're returning to buildings and stuff, and looking at the 4 buildings conditions there, and our number of properties that we have here and consolidating, I want to say, the conversation we had is, let's reduce our carbon footprint as a community, on the number of buildings and things, and obviously, we had talked about doing something with the town garage and moving people back where they're now at the old police station, and then consolidating the number of facilities the town manages and operates, and it's part of the master plan. It's been planned, it's been discussed, but it's kind of like crawl, walk, run. How fast do you do this? And it's kind of like, what comes first, the cart or the horse? But that is the thought process right now, to reduce our carbon footprint as a community. And I know that's been discussed, and I, on the ad hoc committee for the master plan implementation committee, that's been discussed quite a bit, to move forward on how we can consolidate our carbon footprint and the facilities and make it more cohesive from an operation standpoint. So accessibility to the various department heads would be a little more conducive to the community. And so that is a part of the discussion. So from a logistics standpoint, from a parking standpoint, from an accessibility standpoint, that building, location would make great sense, especially at a cost of nothing. But there would be a plan then to what could we eliminate that we currently have, and what this would replace. So I don't know if it's the old police station or Barton Street or something like that, but that's on the table to do that. I know that's been discussed quite a bit. But that's getting ahead of ourselves, because right now, we don't even know if we're gonna,
Right.
what they're gonna say to us. Yeah, but it is part of the discussion, to reduce our carbon footprint as a community.
I only have one other comment, which was just that on the explanation, because I'm not sure if the explanations will end up in the town meeting.
They should, yes.
They will, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, what we're seeing here, they also will see.
Okay, so I might recommend that we remove the phrase blighted parcel if we don't have that term blighted parcel defined within our.
Yeah, if there's a definition somewhere.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. That's not as the article is printed. This is
Understood.
the article is printed is totally different than what the explanation is.
Exactly, yes, yeah. I don't think I saw that in the article.
No, it's not in the article, no.
But might be useful in case folks are asking for a definition. I don't think we have one currently.
No.
Do we have, or how do I want to say this? Has there been some work or done to figure out, I guess, what we can do with that building? Do we have an idea of, like, I mean,
I think this is where we're gonna pass it over and have the manager speak to it.
oh, all right.
Yeah.
She has some
'cause-
ideas.
Yeah.
I was,
I mean,
we can't
you know, like, if somebody I guess what I'm trying to say, did somebody walk through there and say, all right, if we're going to put offices here, this department, and this department, it's going to cost us roughly, and I'm not,
Yeah,
roughly, $250,000. I don't know, I'm picking a number off the top of my head. So,
Right, she would need to
Some-
speak to that. She would definitely need to speak to that. I mean, all I can say is that we have appropriated money in the past for office space lease rehab, so we have some already. But again, we'll let her kind of go over.
like 50,000 appropriated at one point to do some.
Yeah, 50 to 80 even rings a
Yeah,
bell.
we
Yeah,
right? But-
85 at one point.
Yeah, and
Yes,
I
85.
can't speak for the town manager either, but
It was in the building improvement fund, 85,000. Now,
But we did walk the building, actually, myself,
That's what
the
I'm
facilities
asking.
director, the building commissioner, the planning and economic development director, one of our facilities superintendent, we went through the whole building as recently as, probably 2 to 3 weeks ago at this point, and looked at all the, the building systems. It is essentially an open shell at this point.
and
And
there
there
is
was
an
this,
upstairs,
this,
correct?
this, there is an upstairs,
I never knew that until
Yep.
that was, yeah.
yeah, with bathrooms and the like, so it's, but it just, generally, I know there was conversations of the fact that we're sort of bursting at the seams in various places. I can speak to the DPW's need, obviously, we had come before the town for a facility down at 34 Charlton Street to get everyone under one roof, but we've got folks in the building down at 3 Barton, which we're actually moving, in the process of moving up to 450.
Yeah.
Main Street, our headquarters, which is now we're really bursting at the seams up there, so there was talks of maybe there'd be place down there for facilities, our facilities division offices, but
And of
that's.
course, if we ever did a town garage, that would also alleviate stuff, and then we could start, again, reducing our carbon footprint. As
Exactly.
we start.
The only problem there for us, like, I can speak to DPW's operation is that any move that we make, we're currently making a move from 3 Barton, up to 450. We say it's temporary, but a new facility down at DPW at 34 Charlton Street could be 10 years out, right? By the time funding is appropriated, and
Sure.
so temporary is measured in years.
Yeah, what's temporary? And I know right now we're shredding documents to eliminate file cabinets, so we have desk space here. And this is being a historical building. There's only so much you can do. You can't remake an historical building. This footprint is the footprint. We can do maybe some things out back, but not up front. So we're eliminating file cabinets by shredding and putting in electronical documents so that we have desk space here. So I know that was funded, one of the capital items last year, and that's the process so that we can free up office space in this envelope for people.
And I know the town manager, if you don't, I know she's well-intentioned to get here. We had a concurrent meeting up at the PD
Right.
training room for the Lowe's Pond Dam project, so she was attending that.
Well, why don't we pass over this? I think she's gonna come back later. Why don't we, unless there's any other thoughts or comments, we can wait for her, and then we can question her further on this. So we'll pass over Article 8 for the time being. And go on to number 9, Main Street Corridor Improvements. Basically, the State of Transportation Improvement Program, STIP, S-T-I-P, the program under which the state funds 100% of construction cost if the community fronts the design cost. The town has already funded 15% of the design cost for an important safety and functional improvements to the downtown section of Main Street and Front Street to Fairlawn Avenue. The 15% stage is near completion. This fund will advance the project to a 25% design by utilizing professional engineer services. A $200,000 transfer from free cash is planned to reach this 25% level, which makes us then eligible for the full future funding from the state. So, and it would come again out of free cash, that 3.4 million. Now, I'll let you speak to that, Jared, because I know there's been a lot of construction on Main Street and a lot of.
That's right. So what you're seeing out there now is really the sort of first phase, you could call it, in safety improvements to downtown, right? And it's, I don't want to say it's temporary in nature, but it's separate, I suppose, from what we're planning long-term for downtown. The islands that are going in now, we have every intention of retaining those as part of the design for this, but we may see as we go forward that if we do some sort of road diet or narrow things up, whatever it may be, some of them may stay or go away. But that's neither here nor there. That project there was funded entirely, essentially, through grant monies through the state for that particular purpose, for pedestrian safety
Right,
improvements.
well, we had a fatality, and that
We had a
they finally
fatality,
gave us what that.
That's right, yep.
Granted us the money.
At the Fairlawn intersection last year in January, and all of these mid-block crosswalks in terms of geometry are no different from the Fairlawn one. So it's really any one of these could be, they're harrowing crossings because of how long they are, because of how wide Main Street is, and the high speeds it
And then where
encourages.
people park and when there's activities at the bandstand, I mean, I'm petrified.
Well, and you've got wide lanes, you've got
See
wide
people.
shoulders, and you've got people that if they're stopped for pedestrian,
You don't know.
they see the person in front of them, they say, oh, I'm gonna go around them.
don't
It's
see
just, it's prone to lane departure, and then we've had several near misses like that where pedestrians are
People
almost
come
struck.
out from behind cars that are parked too close to the
That's right.
crosswalk, and you don't see them, and, I've seen that when there are activities up at the bandstand, you're doing 5 miles an hour and you're white knuckled.
So this project is an immediate need, right, to sort of quell those pedestrian safety concerns without changing the width or anything. So that's an immediate safety improvement. These are for, like I said, longer-term repairs to get this project on the state's transportation improvement program. So as Mr. Chairman had mentioned, it's the town designs or fronts all the design costs to get that construction cost money later on. And to get to the 25% design stage with the state is really the most intensive part of the process as far as the design goes, as far as the coordination with the state goes. That's really when you're really advancing the design on paper, probably more than 25%, it's probably closer to 50, but in terms of the effort with DOT to get their buy-in to your project and get it onto the state's TIP program, it's the most intensive part. So you'll see that we've already expended money to get to 15%. It's gonna take an additional $200,000 to get to 25%. The consultant we're working on, they're no stranger to designing TIP projects, getting them through the TIP and getting them funded in short order. It still will probably take 5 to 7 years till construction would start. But what they say to me is that generally speaking, to get to the 25% threshold or stage, you're expending probably 60% of the total design cost right in there in that beginning phase. So if you look at, if we're $350,000 all in, because we've spent $150,000 to get to 15%, you're looking at a total design cost of maybe $600,000 to $700,000. And the rule of thumb that we use as engineers is that the design cost usually represents about 10% of the construction cost. So you're looking at a project in the tune of $6 to $7 million that would be 100% funded through the state. So the town needs to front, the design monies, but it's to gain those millions in construction.
So it's 10% of whatever the total project would be is what
Is essentially going to be what the total would be, and so, but these numbers to get to subsequent stages, 50% design, 7,500, those numbers should come down, is basically what I'm saying. It's front-loaded to get, because that's the more intensive part of the design process, essentially, if that makes sense.
You're fine-tuning it at the end of the process. more than-
Exactly.
more than
At that
doing the
point, you've
groundwork.
already gone through,
Field work
several
on it.
reviews with DOT. There's been back and forth on the project scope, and they've really weighed in. So when you get to 75%, design.
We've already
it's-
done all the field work, all the
Oh, yeah,
surveying,
we've
all the
actually
engineering.
already surveyed all of Main Street. We have, detailed survey data of all of Main Street right now with property lines. That's all been established. And we have a working draft, document at this point, of the design that, in the future here, we'll present to the town, for them to weigh in on.
Well, this is all part of that village district that we're talking about, where the state would help us redo all of Main Street, basically. And you're saying it's gonna be 6.5 to 7 million over the course of time. So this is kind of front-loading that eventuality with what what they want the downtown to look like, the character of the historical nature of the community. So
That's
this
right.
is all, and the state would pretty much, or will fund it when we get to that point, if I make any. Go ahead, Joan, you have a question?
Yeah, so does that mean that to get to the 100% design cost, that we'd be looking at expending another roughly $300,000?
Yeah, it's
So that
order of
means,
magnitude
so that,
at this point, but
so
yes.
at this point, so then we would have other articles coming up to expend?
Unless we find some other funding source. I mean, to get to the 15%, actually, we had a project where we had some funds left over. I think it was from the Harwood Street project. We're actually able to get those funds back and put to that design, so that wasn't, a separate article. And if we can do something like that in the future, we will. But in this case, to keep the ball rolling, we're nearing the end of the 15% design process, so to keep this thing moving, this was the logical step to take here, and would allow us to continue the design without any lag time.
So we pay upfront to design this thing, and if the state likes it, then they say, okay, we'll pay you to build it.
Essentially, and that's
Okay.
what we're doing to get to the 25%. This is when you get the buy-in. This is when there's basically a meeting with DOT that you build up to, where they score your project. And, we're working with consultants that have done this. This is not their first rodeo, and they've got great working relationship with the state. So we're confident at this point with what we're proposing that this project will get on the tip. But it does, to get through that process, it still will take at least 5 years. This is the same process the town went through at Charlton Street out here, and that, I can tell you, took nearly 10 years to get through. But, part of that is having the funding available to continue with the design, and, how quickly we can get through that process, so. This,
Harwood Street, the design work was paid by IPG.
yes,
We negotiated with IPG. John Satt at the time, worked with IPG. They paid all the design work for that Harwood Street property.
Yeah,
We made, because that was convenient for their employees to have that light there and that intersection improved. So John was very forceful in getting them to come to the table, and I worked with him on that to get that money approved for the design work from IPG.
and that was a MassWorks grant that
Right.
had paid for the construction, so.
So if it takes this long from starting the design to actually digging the first shovel, turning the first shovel, and you said it can take like 10 years. I guess I'm trying to understand, so much happens in 10 years, especially nowadays, things move so quickly.
Sure.
That is the design that you come up with and everything now going to be viable in 10 years?
It's a fair question. Things change. They did on Charlton Street, so there's some latitude in the design process with DOT to make some changes along the way. But again, I just mentioned that the process, it kind of speaks to how intensive it can be with how long it took for that. I don't anticipate, I'm hopeful it wouldn't take 10 years for Main Street. I think that we have DOT's attention right now with the repairs we're doing. They know what sort of safety issues are present with our Main Street corridor, so they're gonna be wanting to move this thing along, just as quickly as we are. So we're shooting for a 5-year, turnaround to get this.
And there's something built in somewhere along the line into the planning and everything else to allow for odd things like you know, things that have changed, that will change in that, the amount of time from day one to turning the shovel.
Sure, yeah, no, that's fair to say. And, I mean, look, we're looking at the design to how we can, you know, accommodate traffic and different modes of transportation 4 years out, you know, 10, 20 years out. You know, you've heard me say it before in a finance committee meeting that, you know, infrastructure is destiny, so if you build it, they'll come. So that's really high on DOT's priority list too. It's, you know, they do want to see that you're incorporating, you know, separated bike lanes and accommodations for pedestrians. Because we build those things now, they'll be perhaps more useful in the future. You're sort of paving the way for maybe a lack of dependency on cars and you know, reducing the town's carbon footprint, that sort of thing. So that's all built into the planning and design process now.
And I know when we did Charlton Street, talking about some changes, stormwater management changes, rules and regulations
Yeah,
from the
that's what I
EPA
mean.
changed. And of course, the state wanted to make sure that those changes were incorporated, but that could come up to play here as well. Again, carbon footprint, stormwater management's very critical, and those rules change constantly. They keep upgrading and demanding you do this or that. So there's some, I'm sure there's flexibility. A lot of this stuff, it's state-driven. They're giving you the money, but
I was
they
just
want
gonna
it
say.
done, they want it done this way.
They
want
sort
the
of
change.
control the schedule too, because we're at, you know, it's when they can program the funding for that particular project. So they're doing their own capital planning to see when we can get on the tip, basically, for what the construction year will be. So, I mean, realistically, we had the funding, we could get through this design, you know, in a year probably. It's just, we're at the mercy of DOT and their review process and when they can schedule the funding, so.
Okay,
But
thank
you're
you.
confident that at this 25% level, you're there as far as pretty much assured that this will be approved at this point.
Yes, we have no reason to believe, I mean, we've had preliminary conversations with DOT, and if we, you know, continue to advance it, we'll have more discussions, but we have no reason to believe that this
This should get you
project-
to the threshold
This is
where-
really what, you know, this project is right, you know, with an open cross-section essentially. This is a project that the state loves to see. We have so much room and so much right-of-way to do some different things. You know, this is a project that'll score very highly, you know, in my opinion. Our consultants feel the same, so.
Okay.
How solid are we on that 600 to 700 estimate?
I mean, we're fairly confident, because, I mean, again, we're working with consultants that have done this numerous times, so they really know the level of effort it takes to get to 100% design. You know, so I'm basing that off their numbers, and I've got full faith, you know, in those numbers at this point.
Any other questions, Mark? No? Joan?
No, I'm good.
All right, I'd like to hear a motion to approve from free cash the funding of up to 25% of the design work for the Main Street corridor improvements. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Or a second?
Second?
All in favor? Joan?
Aye.
Mark? Karina? Aye. All right. Passed. So next one is roadway improvements. For more detailed information on this article, please refer to Roadway Improvements handout. I don't think where is that? Jared, you're still working on that?
Yeah, let me see, where is it? I am still working on that, so we'll have, I hope to have that by the end of the day tomorrow, all fine-tuned, and we're working on a flyer, obviously, to speak to our historical program, historical funding, how we sort of, how our pavement management system basically runs, and, you know, what we've been able to do with historical funding and what the need is, you know, in the future, basically. So there'll be a handout sort of detailing that. I intend to have some maps to actually, you know, maps of the town to show what we hope to accomplish, you know, with this borrowing in terms of roads highlighted that would be scheduled for repairs. Obviously, we can't promise anything concrete at this point. It's very early in the process, but we want to provide a demonstration of what it could do for the town. And then have a comparative map to say if our funding stays static, this is what it would look like. So, you know, when you see those two maps next to each other, it's pretty striking at what we could accomplish with an extra $5 million.
Well, the article, the explanation is the article is for a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion for the purpose of borrowing $5 million to pay the costs associated with engineering, designing, construction, and reconstruction of roadways throughout the town. A debt exclusion, unlike an override, will result in a temporary increase in the tax levy, but the increase is not permanent. The proposed borrowing of $5 million will be paid back over a 15-year term with the minimum cost, with the minimum cost for the first 3 years, and then it goes up payment-wise. Additionally, during the term of the loan, the police department and the middle school projects, which are on the books for funding, and I'll let Katie speak to that, will be off the books. So this funding will assist to bring Oxford's roadways back to the serviceable conditions. A ballot referendum to pass this by majority vote will be, by the elected, is 2/3. Now, last time, and I'll go back to your predecessor, he put this together, and it passed town meeting, but it didn't pass the ballot box in the community. We put this together because the community didn't want to go ahead with the town garage until we addressed the road issues. Great idea. Other communities have done this. I'm holding up Spencer. They did a $19 million bond over 15 years in increments, because you can't do all at once. You don't want to do all at once. You'd have a traffic nightmare if you had all the money to do it at once. But Spencer's done it. Other communities have done it. So you do it incrementally, and then you do have some software. Right now, we have, what, about 100 miles of road, 89 or
About 92
92.
public road miles, yeah, yep.
And then you have roads that are, you know, it's great, we're over 300-year community, but a lot of these roads were cart paths.
Old cart paths
Paths
with
and
years and
you
years
know,
of chip seals and surface treatments
So,
over
you
them
know,
built up,
it's-
so.
So Rome wasn't built in a day. These roads weren't, and it took 300 years to put some of these in the deplorable condition that they're in. Now, how do we fix them? And my question is, and I was looking at your predecessor's scenario here of what's already failed, what's about to fail, what could fail, and what hasn't, what's perfect, what just needs you know, general maintenance. I started to think, well, you'll fix all the failed roads right away. And then I said, no, because you only want to fix a few of those, because that's a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
You want to catch, before they get to that point, you want to knock off 5 or 7 or 8 of those so they don't get to the big money. You know, so you don't want to do all the bad roads right away. You kind of want to, and you have software that does this, right? You've done all this.
We do. We use a data-driven approach, essentially. So we have, I mean, you can't manage what you don't know, right? So we have a GIS system with survey data on all of the town's roads.
And you go
The
right down
different
to the roadbed
distresses.
or lack of roadbed with
Yep,
sensors and stuff.
If it's a surface-treated road, if it's an asphalt road, when the last, we have repair history in there. We rate the surface distresses, if it's block cracked, if there's alligator cracking, rutting, shoving. All of that stuff is in there, and essentially what we can do is we can, you know, put in different budget scenarios or funding scenarios, and we have that system run a program for us to say over 3 or 5 years, what roads, where should we focus our attention on? And it looks at the classification of the road, it looks at traffic volume, and then obviously the condition. So, Mr. Chairman, you said it, I mean, a sound pavement management program, you know, you can't just chase the worst roads. You can't put the worst first, we say. Because those are the highest cost repairs, and you're just not getting the coverage around town. So while you're doing those roads, you have roads in fairly good shape that are falling down the curve and dropping into lower treatment bands that cost a lot of money. So really what you need to do, and you need to compromise. And you know, what I think the town has seen over several years now is we started with our, you know, $500,000 or so, our Chapter 90 money, right, from the state.
Right.
And then the town started to kick in some.
Since I've been on the committee,
Some
we've added
additional money,
we've
right?
matched it, and that's kept us even.
To get us
They
to
didn't
$1
get any
million.
better, they didn't get any worse.
That's right.
They're
And
the same,
that's
basically.
really what we've projected, you know, for several years back now, is that $1 million is what it will take to simply maintain the town's overall network, and that's really what we've been able to do. You know, we resurvey the town we do a quarter or a third, I should say, every year, and based on analysis, that's what we've shown, is we've basically static and made no improvement. And what we're doing with the monies we do have, trying to spread them as wisely as possible, is that you do focus the money on the main thoroughfares, the higher traffic volume roads, in the name of public safety, right? So you're seeing Leicester Street and 56 get done, Sutton Ave, Charlton Street, Dudley Road, right? All of these main collectors and arterial streets.
But
But not the local roads.
not the local roads.
That's right. So really to make an appreciable difference on the local neighborhood streets, it's
Right.
gonna take an infusion of money. And this is not $15 million, which was was very aggressive. It's only 5, so we're not gonna get everywhere, but we can take a big bite out of the apple here. And then again, the goal is to move as many, structural rehabs and reconstruction, those road miles, into the preventative maintenance category. Because then what that does in out years, this is gonna be, we'd hope to be $5 million distributed over 3 years, right? So $1.5 million the first, $1.5 million the second, $2 million in year 3.
Plus the 500 from the state.
Plus,
chapter-
plus, plus the
Chapter 90.
500 locally, actually, it's proposing the plan and
And
the
this-
chapter 90, because we're hoping or assuming that we'll stay level funded at least. You know, that million will stay constant.
It's coming out of the operating budget, basically, that $500,000 that we're matching that chapter 90. The state has been very lax in increasing chapter 90 money for roads.
That's right.
Because your predecessor had these roads that, to do everything over 15 years, 5 years borrow, 5 years borrow,
yes,
5 years
yep.
borrow, was $18,560,000. And we're at the pavement condition index, the PCI, was around 61%, which is just above
That's
62%.
Representative of our roads is essentially a road,
that's-
it's a D. you know,
That's an
D
average,
minus.
so there are roads out there that you can't,
Yes.
that are not passable.
Yep.
The averages are not,
Yep, we have
But
roads
that's where
down in
we
the
are.
30s.
yeah. So,
Can I ask about this GIS system for
Sure.
a second?
Yeah.
That you're using to classify?
Yep.
So where's the data coming from? How recent?
We use a consultant that goes out and drives every road and, trained in pavement management, asset management, and goes out and does a survey assessment of every road. So that's why we've, to make capacity-wise, we do a third a year. We don't necessarily need, the software itself actually makes a projection. So whether that road's been surveyed every year or not, it's essentially knocking it down the curve in those scenarios. So if we say a road's gonna get done in 3 years from now, it's actually has a deterioration like algorithm in there that shaves off PCI points. So, but yeah, that's someone actually goes out and does an assessment of the roads, looking at percentage of alligator cracking, like I said, and
so,
how-
you're gonna, people are gonna wanna know what roads you're gonna do, first, second, and third, and everything. And I gotta say, you're never gonna be truthful, because everything comes down to two words: weather permitting. And weather permitting is early frost. Weather permitting is because you have, about 38 people. Weather permitting is tree damage, where we're gonna do something tomorrow, but now you're out removing trees from roadways. Weather permitting is an early frost.
Yep.
Weather permitting is a heavy rains, washout because you're doing more than roads here. You're doing culverts. Obviously, when you redo the road, you wanna make sure you have drainage, so you're not losing the road. You're not, next year, where'd it go? So it's a lot more than a road.
Sidewalk.
Yeah, yeah.
well, that's the thing.
Sidewalks.
That's what. So, in showing a map, it's something that I want to be able to show townspeople. This is what we think we can do, but it doesn't show the whole picture because it's so early in the process. We've done no design, but you mentioned sidewalks, drainage, right? These are things that come to light as we
Do the
move through
road.
the design process before we bid these projects out. And that's really, when you say weather permitting, I think of the bidding market is almost, you gotta weather the bidding market. We've gotta package these according to mass procurement law, put them out to bid, they're subject to prevailing wage, so all those things, we don't know what the climate will be, next year, say we get this money, we bid these out. So I'm hopeful, we're conservative with the estimates that we're gonna put on the map, but I can't promise that that's exactly how it'll pan out, right?
And I know you're planning on doing some of that in-house if you can.
We'll try,
You've done
exactly.
a great
Yep.
job over at the library, and you
Yep.
finally did get I know the police are very happy, you put the access road in for the high school and stuff from a safety standpoint. I saw that was done when I was over there looking at the school building. So your guys are becoming familiar with doing, you're not doing Charlton Street, I mean,
No.
but local roads that we can do some stuff in-house
Yep.
and save some money.
That's our intention too, is as we go forward, we've got some paving we'd like to do up like at Rule Field parking lot. We've got maybe some roads that are way down the curve that are out, local dead-end roads that would be good training grounds for us if we rent some equipment.
Rent the equipment and do it yourself.
Start doing some ourselves, so we have every intention of doing that. And you mentioned sidewalks, sorry, I didn't get to that, question, but that's part of the design process too, where it's an ADA requirement, right? Anytime we touch a road, if we do anything on a road besides essentially like a fog seal, which is like sealing your driveway, the expectation is you bring up sidewalks, curb ramps, if they're there, you bring them up into compliance. It's just like doing work in your house, you doing any new work, you trigger new codes, basically. So we would have, the expectation we would be doing some sidewalk replacement, as part of this project. So those costs are, again, we're looking at order of magnitude, opinions of probable costs right now to build out this program. And things will get more refined as we work into design. And I'm hopeful it means that we, being conservative, maybe we free up money and we can add some roads to the list,
Well, yeah,
right?
and
But
the other thing is they're looking at,
just can't make
I
any
know, they're
promises.
looking at consolidating, refinancing some of the debt. Some of the debt's coming off, but there's some debt out there that's at 4, that, you know, because of the stabilization amount of money that we have, we could borrow, because we have a savings account, we can borrow at a favorable bond rating, and I know Jillian and Katie work on that on a daily basis, and so there's opportunities there so that it doesn't hurt the tax levy. If we lower our, you know, take it out, further it out at a lower rate from 4 to 2%, and we bring new borrowings on at 2%, that mitigates the cost to the community as far as incurring a new debt. We can, it minimal, if any, impact on the tax burden, but you know, because I know it's going to take more than 5 over a period of time. Looking at what Sean put together years ago, so we've been, you know, it's great to have an hysterical community. I mean, a historical community, but it's hysterical when you look at the roads. Historical, but hysterical when you look at the roads, because our roads, they reflect the age, 300 years plus.
You know, at the old Depot Road, for example, when I moved, 5 years ago, I think it was relatively recently redone or resurfaced at that point.
That's it.
And it's completely pitted and hard
Yeah.
to.
Well, and I think you've mentioned like the native soils that are underneath some of these roads that contribute to how
Like
they.
Mr. Chairman said, they're just old cart paths that were
Yeah.
there was never an engineered sub-base or anything like that.
Put
so
branches
it's
down to
just-
get the ox out of the mud, and then somebody came, put some stones down, and then somebody came and
Yeah,
put some crushed
exactly.
stone down, and then later on in the and they put a little oil down, and
Yep.
Federal Hill Road seems like
now you
that.
have a road.
Yeah. But
And
unfortunately,
that's-
now those roads are the most costly to replace, and when you've got limited budget and you need to move those towards the main thoroughfares first, that's why we've been seeing some of the neglect there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you'll see, and you'll see as part of this plan, will be to still devote money to preventative maintenance, because we have to protect the town's investment that we've made
Yeah.
over X amount of years, so there'll still
wanna
be
rob
some
Paul to pay
surface
Peter.
treatments, yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Anybody else have
I
any
have a
questions?
question. I do. First of all, we're looking at borrowing $5 million, and we're paying it back over 15 years. But will we need to, in, say, 5 years, borrow another $5 million? Or is this $5 million enough for 15 years? And the second part of my question is, we're putting off police department and middle school projects. What are those projects, and are they gonna be, how long can we put them off?
Those aren't being put off, those are ones that are coming off the
They're coming
books.
off borrowing.
So those are current debt
Oh, okay.
exclusions. So
Okay,
by
okay, good.
fiscal
Even better.
28, those will be off. So the residents would see, since it's not a permanent override, it's just for the life of the debt, they would see,
So in 7 years, those would come off.
right, those
So
would come off.
we'd have that debt exclusion on the tax rate
Currently, yes.
for 7 years. And then we would have the new debt exclusion for the 5 million for 15 years. So they would overlap for
They
a
would
period
overlap,
of
so-
7
But there would be
years.
some relief after that, you know, going into 29.
Like
Okay, and
Chafee
I guess
School
what
Addition-
the
yeah,
big
Chafee
question-
School Addition is paid off in 23.
Okay,
Fire department rebate, remount truck is paid off in 25. The police station construction's paid off in 28. The water tower on Sutton Ave is paid off in 28.
Some of those aren't debt exclusions,
Those
though.
are, yeah, but they're long-term debt, though. as well.
Right, but that's in the levy, so
Yeah,
this is.
but these are monies. There's interest that doesn't serve anybody but the bank that lent us the money. That would be, guys, these things are paid off. That's money that we have now in our operating budget that went to the bank in interest. So a lot of this debt would be coming off. And then there's other debt that goes out in 35 and stuff that they're looking at maybe getting it off the 4% into the 2%. So again, when you're looking at the tax rates, when you're looking at doing stuff, there's a lot of opportunity here to, in the time we're in, money's cheap, but it's not gonna be cheap forever, so, but, no, I don't think, Joan, to your question, that we're gonna, 5 million's gonna be enough. In 5 years, we're gonna be doing this in steps, because, Sean had 18,560,000, and I'm sure that number would change. The roads aren't gonna get any better without,
The backlog will continue to grow. It's probably upwards
Right.
of $20 million right now, and that's, we can show that in, from our pavement management system, you know, run that analysis. But no, 5 million, we figured this will be smaller commitment, right, for the town. to
Right
see-
now.
for right now,
Yeah.
right?
so
Crawl, walk, run.
how would that $5 million roughly, I know because it's gonna change because of the way you pay down debt and everything else, how would that impact the tax rate? Would it add $3? Would it add 50 cents, Do we have, do we have
So
some
each-
rough
each-
idea?
Each payment, each $100,000 is about 6 cents on the tax rate.
So, okay, 6 cents per
So each
100,000
so-
valuation.
So in that 100,000 would be the payment, so Jared has
So
the payment
60 times
schedule.
5 would be
Yeah, so this is, yeah, for the borrowing scenario here, tax impact per $1,000 valuation, home valuation.
Right.
And as mentioned in the explanation, the first 3 years, it's very minimal, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, it's only on the interest, right, at a lower, slightly
Right,
lower
when we-
rate,
when we
not the
borrow.
principal, yeah.
Yeah, short term, for the first couple of
Yep.
years before it goes out to long term, it's just the interest, and then we do the pay downs.
And the interest rate is?
The interest rate, I think, it was as low as 0.5% recently for the,
0.5%.
for
The
the
first-
short-term borrowing, so that's what that would be. And that's where a lot of our borrowings are right now, short-term, because it's great, we're getting great rates, so.
Yeah, but why is that?
Oh, I'm not an expert
Is
on
that
that.
because of the, well, I think when we have money in the stabilization account, we have.
No, it's not, we haven't gone out for any kind of bond
And we
rating.
haven't gone
This
up,
is
right, we're
just-
not very little
No,
borrowing.
this is just the market right now. It's
Right.
just, I mean, you can go and refinance your house for 2.5%, 3%. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just where we're at with interest rates. But I'm not an expert on, that's, I do.
Jillian would be the one to talk to.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
based on the bonding company's, figures, we're looking at roughly, 31 cents in years, basically 4 through 15 per thousand in
Per thousand.
per thousand.
So
So,
if you had a $250,000 house, it'd be 250 times 31 cents.
so basically, I produced a chart based on that, for home values from 200,000 up to, say, 450,000. You're looking at, for a $200,000 home valuation, approximately, I want to make sure I'm in the right column here, sorry. After year, not accounting for years 1 through 3, it's about $5.14 per month additional.
So about $60 a
$60.
year.
About $60 a year, yep. So if you average out the monthly rate, accounting for the first 3 years borrowed at that low interest, it's only a little over $4 per month for a $200,000 house, and that goes up, to $450,000 house. The average monthly is about $968 additional on taxes.
About $110 a year.
Thank you.
That's right, exactly. And so for a $450,000 house, over the life of, the borrowing, it's about $1,700 or so additional on their taxes after the 15 years.
Thank you.
So they cost them $1,700 per,
But this does not account.
over 15 years.
But this doesn't account for the debt that's gonna fall off either. This is just.
That's what I'm saying.
this
There's
is
a lot of
worse-
opportunity here to,
Yeah,
like that that's
exactly.
fallen off.
All this worst case, I guess,
refinancing and
right,
stuff.
that
Right. And I
without
know there's
the school and
conversation to
the
mitigate some of
falling
that.
off, right?
Well, yeah, right. I'm gonna say fiscal '28, when they've both come off,
Yeah,
we're gonna be in
okay.
good shape. That there'll be a realized
So
gain,
one of them offset the other.
yes.
And then there's opportunity on some of the other debt that goes out to 35 and 38, 44 to look at. And I know the Unibank's been in here, and I talked to Jillian, and she said that they're looking at doing that.
Yeah, there's some that they're looking at refinancing, but
Right.
then the
Not all
short,
of it.
I think they'd like to move some short-term, but when we're getting 0.5%, we're not really
Yeah, you don't want
interested
to
in
move
that.
short-term at 0.5% interest.
Yeah, and move over to 2%, I mean,
Yeah.
Is it a variable rate right now for this year?
well, that's, yes, so it changes based on the market, so, I mean, yeah, it could go up to 5%
If the market changed, then you,
and we wanna do something
then
different.
you trigger it. But at 0.5%.
And this would require a 2/3 vote at town meeting and
And a
then go
ballot box.
to the ballot box.
Right, it passed at last at town meeting for the 15, what we're doing, now we're just doing 5 at a time. But to your question, is 5 gonna be enough? No,
Okay,
no.
okay.
Is there any opportunity for any other infrastructure funding from the state or?
Boy, that would be, see, that, for what we're talking about here, that's chapter 90 money, and they're like,
As far as
they're,
road work goes, yeah, that's.
yeah, they're not,
Every now and then, they'll give you like a stipend in the year, you'll get like an extra, an
it's a
extra
small-
$100,000.
that-
I
yeah.
mean,
5 million, 50
no.
we're not the only community
I don't
that
remember
has a
seeing
bone
those
to pick with the
recently,
state
no.
regarding
Yeah.
chapter 90 money.
Occasionally.
A lot of, I've read a lot, that a lot of communities are very upset that they have not kept up with times on chapter 90 money.
Yeah, we get surveys that, Mass Municipal Association
That's right.
sends out annually to every town in Massachusetts, what are your true needs for roadway rehab? And I'm sure Oxford, we're unlike, not unlike any other town, is sending in figures that are much more than what they're getting from Chapter 90. So they know, and I'm sure they're advocating it at the State House, but it's, you know, we do what we can with the resources we have.
And that's why we've been adding to it, so we could just stay even, so to speak.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm wondering about, is there a need to, you know, adjust for preventative, you know, for future costs? I think that's what Joe's getting at too.
I don't know, Jared? I mean, I don't know what else we can do. I mean,
I'm just
I guess
thinking,
this
you
is
know,
a
going
good
back to your
talk.
question, is the 5 million gonna be enough? The short answer is no, but what we hope to gain with, you know, taking a big step forward with the $5 million is, again, we're moving, you know, so many miles of road from that structural rehab or, you know, structural improvement category back up to 100%, and now we can free up the $1 million if that remains static. We can start spreading that a little further, right? We can start knocking off more preventative maintenance, so it's almost like a snowball effect. You know, if we do it again, then if we did decide that the town has an appetite for another borrowing, then we'll just make that much more progress. We'll take another giant leap forward and free up more of that budget for the lower cost preventative maintenance work, and you're gonna see that go a lot further in town.
kind of crawl, walk, run. We're just dipping our toe in. Like I said, Spencer
Gotta
went
start
out and did
somewhere.
19 million and did it all at once over 15 years. And then we had proposed doing 15 million over 5 and 5 and 5. And now we're just talking about 5, but no, it would not address the total, no one.
And we're not alone in this. I mean, all the communities around here, and I'd say even across the country, are dealing with this. It's, I don't know,
Well, New
Many
England
have
being
gone to borrowing, so,
especially New England.
our historical history, the roads come with it.
yeah,
So,
plus the climate, freeze-thaw
yeah,
conditions. is-
freezes,
Yeah.
yeah, New England climate. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the roadway improvement and support for the override of, or debt exclusion, pardon me, debt exclusion.
John, I just have one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I know that there was a handout that was referenced that we don't have.
Right.
We need to wait until we get the handout?
No, this was intended for town meeting. These,
Yes.
we were just giving them to you ahead of time because it's helpful in the discussion.
Yeah.
But this was all intentions for town meeting. So, of course, if we had the handout, we would have had it here for you tonight, but.
It's still in the works. We have actually a public forum, right, scheduled for Monday night at the senior center at 6 PM, in which we'll have, you know, we'll
So you have a
some-
public forum for Monday night at 6
do.
o'clock?
Yep.
For,
Yep.
Yeah.
and would the handout be available at that point, you think?
We'll have a presentation
Station and
prepared.
a
Yep.
handout, yeah. All
And the
right, good.
forum is just to address this article, or, oh, okay, thank you.
For educational purposes. All right, good.
Informational, yep.
Okay, that's good. Hopefully then, because I'm sure it's gonna be well addressed or, you know, in question at town meeting. I mean, it's a borrowing, debt exclusion, 5 million. I wouldn't hesitate, people wanna get up and speak to it. But from what I remember from the last town meeting, when they voted not to do the facilities, the DPW facilities, they said, do the roads.
Right.
And we've been trying to do the roads, and this did pass at the last town meeting. It just failed at the ballot box. We gotta get the people at town meeting to take their friends to the ballot box when this comes up for ballot and bring their friends with them and vote for this if they feel it's worth fixing the roads. I don't know.
Okay.
So, how does the committee feel? I'm looking for a motion to approve, the article is written, Article 10, for this debt exclusion of $5 million. How does the
So moved.
finance committee feel?
So moved.
Moved. Mark? Second. Karina?
Yes.
Yep, our vote, yes?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. 4 of us agree. Next article is Article 11 to see, it's a marijuana overlay district. The marijuana overlay district was created in 2018 at an annual town meeting. The purpose of this article is to provide for the replacement of placement of marijuana businesses in town in suitable locations to minimize adverse impacts or adjacent properties, residential neighborhoods or by schools, and by regulating the site and placement of such business. This article expands the overlay district to further accelerate economic development along corridor Route 20. And I don't have a map here. Is someone gonna speak to that as far as what we're talking about? I saw it's 550 feet. And I think it was originally 500, so we're expanding it by a width of 550 from 500 width.
It is. This is an article that has been brought to the planning board, and they did weigh in and had approved the article. It's a slight expansion to the marijuana overlay district. As you know, we have a very narrow area with the potential for a variety of different businesses. So far in town, we have a retail business that actually is a little bit separate from where the major land parcels are for the ability to open up some kind of cannabis business. We have already an extraction, oil extraction business. We have just had the planning board approve its first, beginning to approve its first cultivation facility. And of course, we have both a medicinal shop and also a retail shop. There is a host community agreement that was issued between the town and a business. And there were difficulties with the property because it's for retail, it was really going to be right on the corner of Route 20 and 56. And there were issues related to why that property purchase didn't go through. But the planning board, along with the Director of Planning and Economic Development and even myself, recognized that it's such a narrow corridor that it would be helpful to expand it just a little bit more. So the bank that's abandoned across the street from where the old club used to be.
Spencer Bank, yeah.
Yes, that is being included now in the overlay district. It's the one property on that side. It goes a little bit across on some town-owned parcels where the, across from where the actual fuel station is. Sometimes you see the Carl's Diner bus there and the like. So because the planning board had voted on it, it was a question on whether the finance committee really wanted to do it because it's really taking an overlay zone that's already exists and just widening it a little bit. So I don't think it has enormous financial implications right now, but I do think it opens up some possibilities for different businesses. And it did pass, as far as I know, unanimous.
board.
Yeah.
They
So,
supported it.
yeah.
Do we want to take
I
a
would
vote?
move, I'd move that we defer to the planning board on this.
Anybody else have any thoughts, Mark? I'm fine with deferring to the planning board. I'll second that.
Is it just the one parcel that's?
No, there's a couple little, like the stretch that has like an old abandoned mill. If you're, where Thayer Pond is, there's across from Thayer Pond, actually going into the intersection, there's a little bit of stretch of property that's there on Long Route 20 that they want to add into it in case somebody wanted to put a facility or a business right where that abandoned, nondescript looking property is. The bank is included in it, and then a little bit further up, in front of where the Boulder Parkway
That's,
area is.
Pioneer, is it
Pioneer.
Pioneer,
Road?
yeah,
Right,
somewhere
yeah.
along there. But they do have a map for it, and because Tony's not here, I didn't come prepared to advocate for something that's gone through the planning board, although I do think it's helpful for prospective people to have a little bit more possibility along the main road for a
We're
facility.
limited, right, as far
We're
as.
very limited by the size. It's particularly, and the townspeople, approved, the narrow focus in advance of the real expansion of the business, statewide. So some people, I think, have thought about, the changes to that, so.
There was a grower, is it still, it wasn't a retail business, it was a wholesale business, where there'd be no people coming in from the community or outside the community. It was just people that had retail permits to sell marijuana would come and buy from the wholesaler, the grower. Was that still on the?
Is there another, well, there is a business that
That's
is.
going through the process currently, that's a grower?
It's a cultivation business.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
talking- yeah.
that is in the process right now.
Right.
They've gone through the planning board for some preliminary approval, then they go through the state for the, site
I don't know how
approval.
this fits into that, but
They're all set. They've already got their
Sure, so-
parcel, yeah. So this would be for something in the future.
And it doesn't impact any of there's green space or wetlands or something?
yeah,
over there?
I don't know, and
I
the
don't think
community, as
so.
far as the butters and.
No, I mean, I think they were sensitive about that. They tried to make sure that it's suitable and it has minimal adverse impacts to adjacent property or residential neighborhoods or anything like that, so.
I did notice there are a few properties for sale over on Main Street here near the retail store.
So that one is only in that zone. I wasn't here when they did that zoning, But they had already picked that area in the past, so they didn't widen that area, which is more closely abutting to a lot of residential neighborhoods. It's not to say that it couldn't in the future, but right now,
But,
that's
yeah,
not
the
what
one- The thing that's in the planning right now is the cultivating, which, the traffic that's on Main Street and that, the traffic that would be on a cultivation would be minimal, because there are people, they're just buyers from a wholesale standpoint, they're not public. Yeah, so, I just, I support Joan's motion to defer to the planning board. They seem to have more knowledge as far as where and how this would impact the community as far as their sensitivity to this type of business and the abutters and.
And we're not seeing any direct financial impact at this point that we can say.
No, I don't see any. Do you?
I mean, the only possibility is, you know, we get excise and.
Get excise,
And in
yeah,
a host
but-
community agreement, there could be something, but,
But at some point, we're
Right
limited
now, we
to
don't
the.
have a business saying, I
Right.
really want to
Fine.
locate there right now. It may help
yeah, it's all.
the retail business
Potential.
that might be there. It might give them an opportunity to find another suitable piece so that they
Are we
can do the
limited to the
second.
number?
Just two, yes. So there is a host community agreement that's still in effect for True Roots, which is a business that had passed muster, so to speak, in front of the Board of Selectmen, and we had entered into it. Because they were having difficulty, the board wanted to give them some more time, because they had already gone through quite a bit of the process. So this may help them, I don't know, you know, if they have an opportunity to look, you know,
At
at
that
some
area.
other, at the other area.
Because
But
we
we'll
are
see.
limited to 2 retail.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's not like we're gonna have.
I'm sorry, I just have one more question, which was, I know that they discussed this a bit during the August 8th meeting on the planning committee.
Yep.
Has there been any discussion since then? I wasn't able to.
They look at the warrant, so they, like you are, they actually discuss this in detail.
They
And,
haven't had any meetings since that August 8th.
They had a meeting.
yeah, they're just recently, they had it the
Tuesday.
other,
It's just
yeah,
been done, or it wasn't when I looked.
yeah, on Monday, I think they
Monday.
did.
Or maybe I looked on Sunday.
Okay, that could be what it is, but
If you
yes,
look,
they
maybe
did.
it'll
and-
be on YouTube tomorrow. You know, it should be. But the 8th meeting, I know that, yeah, it was discussed
I
in,
did see them discussing it
yeah,
there.
quite a bit
Yeah.
as far as,
Sound like
not,
it's
they
final.
didn't wanna do like spot zoning, they wanted to make
Right.
sure that, and it was, the question was whether widen it by 100 feet or 50 feet, and they went with the more, with 50 feet, that's what the article says.
So they would have had two bites at the apple, so to speak, as an article that relates to zoning. They do discuss it in advance, to then actually get approval to then, you know, have it put on the warrant, and then once the warrant is there, they look at all articles pertinent to them and then make the recommendation, so.
Which is what
So
we're-
that's
we're
what
doing.
just happened recently. So it's a good question for the process, thank you.
Yeah, I know they discussed it quite, so there was 600 foot, 100 foot more width and 50, and they went with the 50.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like they erred a little more on the conservative side as far as what they're proposing.
Okay.
All right, so we had a motion to defer. All right, vote, Joan?
Was it seconded?
I seconded.
Oh, yeah, aye.
Yes. Yes, all right, you want to take a minute, you want some water? All right, next article, where are we at here, for zoning, what am I at here? Okay, give you a minute. You all right? All right, no, it's okay, take your time. Okay, this Article 12 has to do with weights and measures, sealer of weights and measures.
I'm sorry, one more go.
All right, no, all right, take your time.
All right.
So, basically, this is a sealer of weights and measures is responsible for testing and certifying all commercial weighing and measuring devices such as gasoline meters, scales, and scanners. This article seeks to marginally increase the fees charged for such testing and certification to align Oxford fees with that of other neighboring communities. And without reading all the different changes, I mean, just looking at cherry picking a few, one on scales going from 25 to 30, one on capacity of her tanks going from 17 to 30. It's kind of, like the article, like the explanation says, it's marginal, but it brings us up with other surrounding communities, what they charge for fees for weights and measures, so, anybody have any questions on this particular article? As far as what the purpose is to get our community in line with other surrounding communities as to their fees, so we're one step in it.
Communities were used as a comparison.
Well, let's see, I will turn that over to the town manager, what
Yeah,
community?
this was sponsored not by the manager directly, but by our actual sealer of weights and measures and our economic development director. What I would say is that if you look at the proposals, they were based on area communities that actually have a sealer and weights. Not everybody
Does.
has that. So I know that they did look, and that's why, you know, for scales and balances, weighing capacity of 10 pounds or less, they went from $25 to $30. Each liquid capacity measure, except for vehicle tanks, of the capacity of more than 1 gallon, and measures on pumps from $17 to $30. So that is being used to guide, and I know that it was based on the communities that actually have a sealer and weights. Again, we'll be prepared to discuss that at town meeting. I will, because I want to be as well-versed as the sealer and weights person who proposed the article, along with our Director of Economic Development. But this also has to do with reverse vending machines, you know,
Right.
that go up for $2. And so I have confidence that the sealer and weights appointee knows their stuff. And one of the things I think they recognized is that that we were behind the ball. To my understanding, I don't know of any other time where these were adjusted even marginally. So they're suggesting to adjust it marginally, and I know that they couldn't be here this evening, but I know they'll be able to speak to it.
Well, that was my next question, is when the last time it had been adjusted, so.
Thank you.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
I hear a second? Second. All vote, Joan?
Aye.
Mark? Rena? And I vote yes as well, so. Yeah, they're marginal, like $15 to $20, I mean, they're not. The last article is Article 13, gas inspector and plumbing inspectors. Presently, the town manager appoints the inspector of gas piping and gas appliances in buildings, and the Board of Health appoints the inspector of plumbing. This article creates a new chapter in the general bylaws where both positions will be appointed by the town manager. Jurisdictionally oversight of and with jurisdictional oversight of the building commissioner. This will align with inspectional services under the building department, so all other building inspectors.
All the other inspectors fall under the building commissioner, and we haven't had a real full-time building commissioner for, before I was here, right? So, one of the things that the Office of Land Management is trying to do for inspectional divisions are wiring inspectors. We want to actually have anybody who is operating as an inspector to actually report to the Chief Code Enforcement Officer, which is the building commissioner who's licensed by the Commonwealth. And what I think this makes sense is this is just one of those disconnects that somehow happened along the way. Maybe once upon a time, we just had people listed as the plumbing inspector, and then somehow gas became, even more into the picture. And so the fact that the appointment is done by one board versus the manager in the jurisdiction is they answer to the Board of Health and not the commissioner. The Board of Health doesn't necessarily understand the actual inspectional duties and requirements as a project is moving along. So it makes sense that the commissioner, and it is a request from the building commissioner and also the plumbing and gas inspector. It makes sense for them to all be one team.
Because they're working on out of the book.
So it's a language change, but it's really because the commissioner would be coordinating those efforts. And now all of those inspection scheduling and stuff.
Go right to the,
It happens there now anyway, so let's make it where it makes most sense. In most communities, it is under the commissioner.
all right, I hear a motion to approve. I hear a second. Vote,
I'll abstain, please.
Mark? Yes. Marina? And I vote yes, 3 yes, 1 abstention. That pretty much concludes the articles.
We'd like to
Unless
go back
there's-
to number 8 with the manager here?
Oh, now the manager, pardon me, oh, that's right.
Sorry,
We
and I
passed
do
the-
apologize to the committee for not being here. I had another meeting, and I asked our very astute finance director and our DPW director to try to pinch it for me. But please, I missed the conversation about 335, but I'd be more than happy to provide a little background about why this article is there. Does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
we're looking at, looking at possible numbers. Up till now, we've had a lot of discussion, but we passed over it till you were here.
I think they had specific questions too, and I think one of them was when it was built, and I think I got that answer as well.
Okay.
Because 1904 it was built per the assessors.
1904.
So this building has been, it's part of our downtown, and it, used to be a bank. And it has been vacant now for several years. The previous owners were looking to have a potential lease occupant. That has not happened. And then what happened is they had the former owners now no longer own it. There's a newer owners that have it. And they have a property management company that is managing the whole, not just that bank, but 2 others that have fallen into disrepair or inability to be occupied. It's an important piece of property from our master planning perspective because it is downtown. We did have a lot of complaints this year because the grass was really high and new owners weren't taking care of it like the former owners that were looking to get a lease for it. What happened in the winter is they had a major water break inside the building. The last time I looked at it, because we thought about potentially using it because it's so close and proximal to the town hall a couple years ago, there was a potential of maybe leasing it. But in order to bring it up to an ADA compliant building, it wasn't gonna be worth it to lease it at that time because there was too much work for a lease property. It'd be different if you owned the property and you're gonna put that kind of investment into it. So it was worth looking at that time, when I went in and along with our team from facilities and the DPW director and a number of other inspectors, our commissioners. The building itself looked like a bank, but it had a solid structure to it. But then with the water break, what happened is the new property maintenance company went in and put everything right to the studs. So they took out a lot of the bulletproof glass and all that stuff. So it really is a tabula rasa, it is there that it could become something. This is the issue. Our director for planning and economic development, Tony Sousa, and myself, had reached out to see if there was anybody looking to go into this building because we had seen the outside of the building not being maintained and we were concerned, and our fire department and other people weighed in and we got them to cut the grass and everything, but then we also found out that they were looking for an occupant and nobody was biting to buy the building. So the property management company would really not like to go through the winter time with this building again. And they are trying to negotiate with the current property owners that own 2 other banks, one out of state here, 2 other Santander banks that, they're trying to get for this one to show that the town may be interested in it. I made a pitch that it might be beneficial to the property owners as a 501c3, as a nonprofit, as a municipality, that it might be worth their while rather than selling it since they can't get anybody to buy it. Even based on the work that was done for remediation to improve the building, for somebody to come in and do something with, it's been on the market for quite some time and nobody is buying it. So that maybe they might be willing to consider the town as a donation, which if that were to happen, that's still a real estate transaction. If we do nothing and it becomes either A, available by a donation or some kind of low nominal fee, for reimbursement of some of the work that they did, it would still be an important consideration. I think the townspeople should have an opportunity, along with the Board of Selectmen, to be empowered to at least move it to the next step. If it happens in the next month, let's just say, and we don't have any ability to have acted on it at town meeting, then we would have to have a special town meeting to take up the whole thing. And, that's just a lot of money and energy to do once again. So this is a placeholder. Obviously, if they come back and say they want an exorbitant amount of money, we're not gonna be interested in it. So all we're asking is, as a potential planning, file card to be put there, so that if it becomes available, we will at least be able, whether it's donated, offered for sale or anything, if the townspeople, through our board initially of selectmen are interested in pursuing it, then we have the ability to negotiate. And the Board of Selectmen would negotiate that anyway because it's a piece of real estate. But the townspeople have to approve some parameters for that. So I can tell you that by next week, if I find out that it's really, cost prohibitive and they don't want to donate it and they don't want to do it at a, something affordable, I would tell you that I'll ask to have it passed over, because it is being sponsored by myself and the Director for Planning and Economic Development and
So you pass over.
Facilities. We might, but I don't know that. I do know that as of today, we keep talking with the property manager, the owners wanted a couple days to consider the proposal I had already put across the table. So I don't know if they'll bite on it, but if they do, we will be prepared for October 6th to talk about it. If they don't, then, there won't be a lot to talk about, but,
Without impeding your negotiations, and, because this is a public meeting, and they may be listening, and so I don't wanna impede your negotiation. You must have a cap number on what the nominal amount is, and I think we're all sitting here, but I don't think,
so I think
I
we.
wanna hurt you by announcing to them what you're,
No, I mean, we would put in a cap for that, as we go forward to talk about it. Not today, we won't talk about it, but at town meeting, we'll be making the motion, no. It's really, it's a placeholder. We're not just talking about being able to, acquire the property, but also to build it out if we needed to do that for a town purpose. And we know that it would require some money to do that. And we have the ability with, free cash to look at that. And so it's, like I said, it's a placeholder, and then what we would say is we would put in a cap. If we owned the building and we wanted to do it, Katie and I discussed what would be a reasonable cap that would give the Board of Selectmen and the townspeople some assurances that if we were to want to acquire the property and try to build it out, you can talk about anywhere between $350,000 or $500,000 for a one-time
that would be to
investment.
acquire and build it out.
Right,
Build it out in
right.
two
I'm not
steps.
looking to
Just
do
to
anything.
acquire it.
Right,
In other words, you'd want it
right, to be able to.
acquired and built out, so
Right.
it's usable.
So we'll have better, like I said, a better understanding. Every day we make the call, and the guy, has came back on Thursday and today that they wanted a little bit more time to consider it. So let's hope that they,
So between now and town meeting next week, we may pass over it. They may say, no, we're gonna
Right.
keep our cards and.
right. So I wanted to be prepared in case this were to happen. It wasn't something that was necessarily on the radar for months and months. We started to see some activity there. We started to inquire, built a relationship with the property managers. Their recommendation is they need to unload it. And, it is unusual property in the sense that it's right next to the town hall. There's ample parking. It's not ample parking for a small business or anything
Right,
like that,
right.
because they have just the parking in the
Right.
front and one space
They're
in the round
restricted to
back.
the egress and.
And we do have problems with the Barton Street property. We have people working in facilities, which, again, I won't get into, but
Yeah,
I'm
Jared
not,
spoke on that, and I mentioned that the plan is to, over time, is to reduce our carbon footprint as we move forward. This
Sure.
would allow us to look at the Barton Street and do other consolidations as we move forward. Assuming we ever built a town garage, we fixed the roads, we talked to the school department, all the things that we're trying to do to reduce our number of buildings and facilities to better maintain what we do retain. So that's all in the process, and of course, the location of that and the sharing of the parking here would make a lot of sense, because people could conduct business here or there without having to move their car, or as you do if you go to Sturbridge and you've got a town hall, and you're in the
Right.
wrong, you gotta get back out and you gotta go over here. And so it would make sense, location.
it could be a great place for all of our inspectional division to be
Yeah.
right there, so that when, builders and contractors are trying to come in quick and get a permit, they're not having to navigate all the way up here to the second floor. But we don't know, and that, again, my job is to try to put proposals out there to see what might be there, and then to bring it to the townspeople to consider and for this board to consider. I could just say, geez, it's just a lot of work, and wait till another piece of property appears, but, that's one thing that God's not making a lot more of, and that's land. So,
Well, that and the location that this particular
yes,
parcel sits
land
on.
that is in a good proximal location to town hall is not
Yeah, yeah.
happening every day, so.
So what's the pleasure of the board, the committee here? I mean,
One more question.
sure, go ahead.
So you had mentioned, discussing maybe some amendment potentially before town meeting?
Maybe to pass it over, if we don't have enough information, or it looks like it's too cost prohibitive, I wouldn't recommend, to entertain it. I mean, it is an article, like I said, as a placeholder right now, and I wish, I had the ability to tell you, it's not for not pushing the property managers into trying to help us, better understand, but we have the ability with having, certified our free cash early. We want most of that to go to our capital plan in the spring, but this, again, acquisitions and property build-outs are one-time capital investments, so we don't want to use our hard-worked numbers that keep coming in every year at a better amount, but I think I feel comfortable, and our finance director feels comfortable, that this might be an important investment for the townspeople to consider while we have that money that is available potentially for a one-time investment.
And think like the auction revenue, it's almost one for one in a way.
Right.
So it's a perfect matching of revenue and
So,
expenditure.
we, maybe make a motion to recommend with the provision that it would be within the reasonableness to complete the building, not only acquire the building, within that $350,000 to $500,000 cap, not to exceed something of that nature. That would
Yeah, I
make-
think once.
That would make more sense.
I'll make the, yes, if you want to put it that way, if it winds up being the upper limit, obviously, I'll have to explain that
But
when.
I would say the range of,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
it's
fine.
great if they
That's
give it
fine.
to you. If they give it to you and
Right.
if we can fix it for 200,000, I mean,
Exactly.
let's,
No, I think
hallelujah.
that's reasonable, and I appreciate the
So
flexibility.
I would make a motion, or entertain a motion to recommend with the proviso that it's in the property range of not only to acquire it, but to make it, build it out of 350 to 500, not to exceed, and then we'll hope for, it's less than that or free. Anybody care to make that motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Mark? Marina?
Yes.
And I as well.
There's a question.
We can't take questions from the audience, I'm sorry. It's not an open meeting. All right. Is there anything else on the warrant that we need to discuss, or articles?
We didn't vote on Article 4, I don't know that we needed to, but.
Article 4 was for the pre-public library to transfer to the Board of back to the Board of Trustees, and it has no financial, and Article 1 neither, we didn't vote on that either, just to recap. Again, that's,
And then there was the one that we passed over to the planning, so those are
the planning board, yeah, the defer to the planning board, which we did. So that takes us to new business. Is there any committee have any things they want to bring forth?
the remote meeting was suspended, the remote meeting order was suspended.
Yep, Governor Baker did
Yes.
that, yeah.
Is there any additional availability to have remote attendance at the next flexibility in there?
For your committee, you mean? So.
Like if you were out of town, could you
Right.
remote in?
Just because there's so few of us, I'm wondering.
So
about
there is so the remote policy for Zoom, that has not been continued. The Board of Selectmen took a vote to go back to in-person meetings. However, the town does have a remote policy for boards and commissions, which if there is a quorum present at a meeting, and the board entertains that they are willing to identify the person who's on the committee or the commission that needs to participate by remote, that they can do that as a board. But again, most of the time that would be a call-in. It's not necessarily guaranteed that you'd be able to do Zoom, but you would be able to do that, and you have to be identified. And there's a little policy. So if you couldn't, but you wanted to participate and you advised the chairman in advance and the board had a quorum that night, you have to have a quorum to be able to do it. Present in person
before
To
you.
do-
Oh, so we wouldn't be eligible for that if one of our members was remote.
Well, we have one
Well-
member that would be joining us and possibly another as well, so we will have,
So when you have the full complement.
which is what I said about when we reorganized. We wanted to make sure that we can afford them the opportunity to chime in.
We can share that with the board, you know, in terms of what you would have to do, okay? All right, no problem.
Any committee requests? Anything we're looking for, documentation prior to town meeting, anything that we would need? No? All right.
Very well prepared. I really, just as an aside note, I really did like there was a letter that was mailed from the previous activities of the town. That was wonderful, very informative, and the materials presented tonight were very informative as well.
Try to
We
keep
put a lot of
everybody-
effort into the newsletter, and it was,
Very well.
it got delayed a little bit because of COVID, but it's one of the manager's communication strategies with all the department heads, and I think Katie will attest that at our recent department head meeting, we wanted to really highlight as much as possible of the work that goes on and not take for granted that people understand all of those dynamics. There's a lot of great stories to tell and also great services and programs to point out. So thank you for that.
Every department had a piece, and it was good.
Yes.
We got to hear what everybody was up to. And again, as I said before, as a role, Mark, as a member and any future members, it's a lot of work, and I appreciate you joining. Prepare for the meeting prior to the meeting and do due diligence, contact the town manager or Jarrett, one of the department heads, or Katie or whoever, well, depending on your question, and get your answers so that you come to town meeting well prepared. So it is work. And you come to our meetings well prepared, so we ask all the questions that we need asked, that we think we need asked, and hopefully the people that go to town meeting watch these meetings on YouTube, and they come with questions that we haven't asked, or thoughts or things that we need to maybe reconsider. But if we've done our work, that shouldn't be the case. We've drilled down and had an open conversation, and if they listen to it, they will be able to be comfortable in voting at town meeting. They'll be better educated into what the articles represent. Committee, next is discussion of upcoming meetings. We will have one meeting at 6 o'clock scheduled for prior to town meeting. As usual, we always as a committee meet 1 hour prior to the town meeting, so that'll be at the high school. And then after that, I think, going forward, Katie, I'll
We'll
let you
have,
speak.
yeah, so the capital forms have been sent out to the department heads in mid-August. They're due back on October 1st. I know that there are some that are gonna take a little bit longer, but as long as they have it in time for their meeting with the committee, I think that's fair, and you'll have the information ahead of time so you can prepare as well. So we're expecting those to come in. My directive to the department heads is that we have a capital plan right now. You know, we
have
put
a
one
5-year,
together, right?
yeah, 5-year.
And to just look at those items that are there and how they're spread out and just modify. I mean, there might be things that have come up that were unexpected and maybe there's some movement, but to kind of consider what's already there and modify that as needed.
Right.
So we'll see how that, I know I got one in already from the school, and so we're gonna look at that. I think there's some changes in numbers because, you know, as you know, everything has gotten more expensive over the last year, so some of the figures that were given to us are going to change. So that's already been indicated by the school for some important building repairs.
Yeah, I think some of the building repairs, but their school, we talk about free cash. They, whatever they have in surplus, that's from prior years, they retain on their end. And I had a great conversation with them, the school committee and the superintendent and Justin, about some of their capital requests, that a lot of there's money out there that they can self-fund, not come back to the community, us, for some of these things that are small in nature, whether it's, when I say small, and it's 45 here, or 35 here, or 25 here, it's real money. But as opposed to putting those as a request to us, there's money that they have in surplus, and they were in concurrence with that, being prudent and conservative and recognizing there's things that they can do on their own that aren't major in nature. And that was a good conversation when we toured the school buildings and looked at what the facility conditions were.
And what I saw from the school, he was laying out all the requests, and then he had a funding source column,
Yeah.
so that some of those items were gonna be funded by school revolving funds.
Right.
So I think that was nice and transparent, where you get to see all the requests.
Right, all-
But they're
right.
not, I mean, they're all gonna come forward to you, so you can see them, and everyone can hear about them, but some of them are gonna get funded within the school's own ability,
That's
so.
what- and
so I thought that
I
was-
asked him to do what you just
Yep,
said, and he
yep.
said
So
he would do
he's-
that, so
yep.
he's done that.
Exactly,
And-
yep. And the other thing I want to note is that in the charter, it does say that the capital plan should be 6 years. So I modified the form, so we'll be getting an extra year out of that. So so there is a year in there that we don't have in our plan, so they'll also have to, put that in there.
Expand that.
Yes.
But there's a lot of stuff that was, like, say, for 2 years out, that something happened and they had to address it, and we've already addressed it. So that fell off because it was, like we were talking about the culverts, or say, I'm just as an example. So it's kind of, the 5-year plan kind of changes. Things go on, come off, but it's a 5-year, now 6-year.
Yeah, we're gonna make it the 6 year so that
So
it's
what happens,
current with the
Mark, so
charter.
everybody so you're new, what happens is they put together a whole wish list, and we entertain, and we get all their reasons why they want this, that, and the other. Then the town manager, and the process goes back and says, okay, well, here's what we have to spend, let's prioritize it, how many of these things will we do? And then we review it again after she's had an opportunity, and then question why you funded this or you didn't fund that, and what the reasons are. So we really look at it 2 times. Initially, from the department heads on their laundry list, and then a second time with the town manager's input and the department heads again on how they prioritize stuff and what they did fund and what they said, well, we can wait another year, we're not gonna fund it, we still want it, but we don't, the need is less that we can get by with another year, so we'll put it on fiscal '24 or whatever the fiscal year is. So that's the process that we're
And
gonna
then
go
there's a
through.
public hearing as well.
And then there's
before
and
the
then
town
at the
meeting.
end, we have a separate public hearing, just on, not on the budget, but just on one-time capital requests. So that's how that process works, just to give you a heads up on that.
In the newsletter, I did put, I wanted to show the amount of capital spending that we are doing. It is phenomenal, because we're actually addressing huge maintenance and building systems backlogs, to the point where many of these things are either coming off the plans or we found a different funding source. So we know it's a priority, we put it there. I may find a grant that we are able to be eligible for, or we may find another avenue that helps support some of the funding that we have allocated. So that allows us to leverage the end-of-year surplus, which is what we're doing, and that capital spending goes back into the next year. And so I do know that, in relation to where we were 3 and 4 years ago, it's like night and day. And so I give a lot of credit to both the committee and the townspeople for recognizing that we need to invest in our infrastructure. If we don't, it hurts our bond ratings over time, and it also means that it becomes more costly. And we've had indications of things that were long overdue and deferred, and it's cost us more money to do that. And so getting on this regular routine has been very helpful, so we thank the
Yeah,
committee.
the building improvement account was sorely funded at one point, and we were neglecting a lot of and now when we had to face it, was 3-4 times the cost, just like we were talking about with the roads and stuff. Yeah, we've had a bad history as far as maintaining our facility footprint in the past, and we've done a lot better
Yes, we
going
have.
forward. But we've paid for that. We've had to demolish buildings and do things that we could not, we could have saved them if we'd have been more diligent, but we weren't.
Oh, that
We-
would beat that cost, right?
Yeah. All right, I don't want to digress from our meetings and what we're going to do capital request-wise, but that's, Mark, just for your edification, what the process is going to be going forward. And then we start the budget process in early December, and we finish it up in early spring. So, and then we come back and at that point revisit and have a public capital request meeting and wrap that up for the spring town meeting. All right, so that's March, so October the 6th, is that the date? I think it is, 6
Next
o'clock.
Wednesday.
Next meeting,
We hope to see you there.
yeah. Hopefully we'll
Chairman.
have some new members, some new faces. I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we're adjourned. Thank you all.
No, fireworks.
Yes.